are still in lesson 9-1 on page 126. Although the slope of a line can be calculated by looking at a graph and counting the vertical and horizontal change, we could also calculate the slope numerically. Okay, what that means is when we're given 2 points, 2 ordered pairs. Recall that the slope of the line is the ratio of change in y, which we also say is our rise, divided by our change in x, also called our run. Question A says to identify 2 points on the graph from page 125 and record the coordinates of the 2 points that you selected. So remember, I had you write down 2 points, 0, -3, that's our y-intercept, that's 1 point, and the second point happens to be our x-intercept, which is 7, 0. So let's write down 0, -3, and 7, 0. So my first point and my second point, we're writing down the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate. Which coordinates relate to the vertical change? So vertical change, remember, is up and down. Your y values, your y-axis. So that would be -3 and 0. Which coordinates relate to our horizontal change? Horizontal is left to right. That's our x-axis. So those would be our x-coordinates. Which, remember, those are 0 and 7. Question D says determine the vertical change. Vertical is our y-coordinates from question B. Okay. If I'm looking for the change, I'm looking for the difference between those two things. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our second point, the y-coordinate, which happens to be 0, and we are going to subtract the y-coordinate from the first point, which happens to be -3. Well, if I'm subtracting 0 minus a negative, 2 negatives make a positive, so this becomes 0 plus 3, which is 3. Question E, determine the horizontal change. Horizontal change, remember, is our x-coordinates. So I'm going to take the second x-coordinate minus the first x-coordinate. So 7 minus 0, and we get 7. So my vertical change is 3, my horizontal change is 7. Remember, slope, if we're going to write this, it's vertical y divided by horizontal, which is x. So my slope is 3/7. That doesn't reduce or simplify, so we're going to leave that. And it says, how does this slope compare to the slope that we found in question 10? Let's go back to question 10. Actually, I think the book, that's a typo. I think they're asking for question 9. So if we go back and look at question 9, notice our slope, notice our slope here is 3/7. So I counted my rise over run on the graph, and we got 3/7 in question 9. Then, if I'm using the 2 ordered pairs, the 2 coordinates, we still got our slope as 3/7. So we got the same exact answer. slopes are the same. Okay? Question 11. Normally, we label the coordinates of the first point as x1, y1, and we label the coordinates of the second point x2, y2. Okay, so let me show you an example of that. So here, we could label this. This is our x, and this is our y. Okay, this is my first point, so they both get little ones. X1, Y1. Up here, my second point on my graph is the 7, 0. Now we can label that as X and Y again, but this is my second point, so they would get little 2's. X2, Y2. Okay, so X1, Y1, X2, Y2. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Letter A, write an expression to calculate the vertical chain, which is our change in y, of the line through these two random points. So what we're going to do is we're going to take y2, the y value of our second point, and we're going to subtract the y coordinate of our first point. So y2 minus y1. Write an expression to calculate the horizontal change, the change in x, of the line through these 2 points. So horizontal change, we know we're going to use our x values, and we're going to take the second x minus the first x. So x2 minus x1. All right, let's put these two things together for question C, and that's going to give us our slope formula, which was our second learning target. So the change in y divided by change in x. Y is our rise, it always goes on top. X is our run, it goes on the bottom. Second points minus the first points. So you are going to write this slope formula everywhere. Even put it on a sticky note if you need to. Move it from page to page. y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. This is our slope formula. It would be posted all over my room if you were sitting in my classroom. On the top of page 127, you're going to see a box called the Check Your Understanding. The book never gives us room to work these out. So what you're going to do is use the My Notes section of your book on page 127. You have the entire graph paper portion of your book called the My Notes. We're going to use that portion of our book. Okay, I'm going to help you with question 12. It says use the slope formula to determine the slope of a line that passes through these 2 points. 4, 9, -8, -6. So if you would like to, right underneath those points or in the My Notes section of your book, let's label these together. Okay. X is always first, Y is second. And this is our first point, so it's x1, y1. X and y, this is our second point, so we're going to write 2's, x2, y2. Y's go with y's. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite my formula just so you can see it. Y2 minus y1. So my slope here is y2, which is negative 6, minus y1, which is 9, divided by my x's now. So x2 minus x1. Negative 8 minus 4. If you can do this in your head, great. If not, go ahead and type it into your calculator. 6 plus 9 gives me 15, and I'm going to keep the negative. You owe somebody $6, you owe somebody else $9, so you owe a total of 15. 8 plus 4 gives me 12, and I'm going to keep the negative. You owe somebody $8, you owe somebody else $4, you owe a total of $12. Now, I know right away that this cannot be my final answer. Here's why. When I'm multiplying or dividing, two negatives make a positive. So I have a negative 15 divided by a negative 12. Those two negatives are going to cancel each other out. And I know that my answer is going to be positive. I also know I'm not done because 15 divided by 12 is not in simplest form. I know that they're both divisible by 3. Okay? If you don't know how to reduce fractions, if you type negative 15 divided by negative 12 into Desmos or your calculator app, it'll reduce it into 5 over 4. Always box in your final answers for me so I can find them. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So my final slope is 5 over 4. Up 5 over 4. Up 5 over 4. Okay? So what I would like you to do is pause the video, and you are going to find the slope between these 2 points in question 13. There's the slope formula. Pause the video. Try your best. You can do it. Y2 minus y1. So negative 10 minus negative 3. Divided by x2 minus x1. So 9 minus negative 5. If I'm subtracting a negative, it turns into a positive. Two negatives make positive. So this actually becomes negative 10 plus 3. And I can write that out for you so you can see it. And the denominator becomes 9 plus 5. So negative 10 plus 3 is negative 7. 9 plus 5 gives me 14. Ooh, but I know that this is not reduced. 7 goes into itself once. 7 goes into 14 twice. So this right here would be my final answer. Okay, get into the habit of reducing. You can do it. Question 14. It says explain. So imagine that you were explaining this to your friend who might have a different Algebra 1 teacher, or to a parent, or to a sibling. Explain to them how you would find the slope of a line from a graph. By looking at a graph. We did this in question 9. When we're given a graph, if there are no points, there are no dots, no ordered pairs on the line, first of all, you need to plot 2 points on the line, if necessary. Remember, we're looking for a good bullseye point that's in the middle of an intersection, a crosshair between x and y. Then, after you plot those 2 points, all you really need to do is count rise, which is my change in y, my vertical change, divided by your run, which is your change in x or your horizontal change. And then, of course, if necessary, we need to reduce or simplify the fraction. Question 15, I want you to come up with something. Explain to someone else how you would find the slope of a line if you're given 2 points, 2 ordered pairs, an x and a y. If we're given 2 points, we're going to use those 2 points to find the difference in my y values. Difference means subtraction. And your difference in the x values. All right, I would say we're going to use the slope formula. And find the difference in your y values over or divided by the difference in your x values. Change in y divided by change in x.